Hi, I'm Steffen. I'm the CMO and co-founder of Dreamdata. I'll be joining Christian and Søren on the Messy Growth Show, and we will be talking about repeatable growth, how to build an engine, how to make sure that it works, that you can track it and get to know what works in the future. And hopefully you'll be inspired by this and can go on and do better in your own.
Welcome to the Messy Growth Show, where we talk to founders and marketeers of software and manufacturing companies about their path to growth and challenge the conventional beliefs of what works and what does not to help you untangle the path to your growth. Your host on this podcast is Christian Jørgensen, and I am Søren Hansen. So let's get started with today's guest on the Messy Growth Show. So welcome to the show, Steffen, and
thank you very much,
taking the time to join us here on the Messy Growth Show. Before we start, perhaps you could give us, you're CMO at Dreamdata right now, but give us an introduction of yourself and a short description of your journey to where you are now as founder and CMO of Dreamdata.
I'm happy to. I've been working in B2B companies in marketing, growth, stuff-related roles ever since I graduated Copenhagen Business School back in 2000. And so it's been some years now, and all those companies has always been digital or like software or stuff like that. So, or in my opinions, as you will hear today, is very much shaped by that. It's always been digital B2B companies, and what I say might not be true for all businesses, but I've at least now I've told you that that's how I'm colored in my opinion. Started out with an extremely scrappy startup that failed, but learned a lot about online marketing, SEO, etc. when I was there. On to what is now Upwork, which I think that's where I met Christian for the very first time.
The Elance days, right?
Yeah. So my story with Elance was that I read the 4-Hour Workweek book, started experimenting with these online freelancers, and then as they were opening an office here in Europe, they asked whether I might be interested in joining that team. And having not made any money for the first 1 or 2 years after graduating, I thought, okay, let's get some salary, and that was nice.
That's good.
And then from Upwork, I moved on to Airtime, where I was the head of marketing for 3.5 years, and we went through this kind of from less than 20 to more than 100 employees, and spending zero on ads to spending hundreds of thousands, somewhere around $100,000 per month on ads or something like that. So in that process, you start wondering, is this actually a good idea, or is it not a good idea to spend all this money on advertising? The first money you put in, you have a pretty good causality understanding. I did this happened, but the last 10, 20,000 you put in, you're a little more, I don't know. And then at the end of my tenure there, I happened to get introduced to what then became my two co-founders, Lars and Ole, that claimed they had somewhat of a solution to these attribution questions that marketers had in B2B companies. I saw a super ugly prototype, but it could somewhat answer the questions I had been asking myself for a long time. Like, how long does it take from when we see a customer, a person the first time before they become a customer? Which are the good ads? Which are the good pieces of content? Are we doing a good or bad job in marketing? And I decided that if I'm ever going to be like a full-time entrepreneur, I said, okay, maybe now is the chance, because there's two super smart technical people that has a solution to a problem, which I know to be very real. And here we are, like 4 years later. We've now just raised this Series A round and have a pretty solid B2B go-to-market analysis, B2B distribution product with customers and all over the world now.
Nice. Congrats on the funding round. That's always a bit of a tough journey to get on.
It was historically bad timing of raising money, as we started by beginning of Q2 last year, and everybody was, I think even the VCs will agree now, there was a bit of a panic time. Nobody wanted to move on anything. So it took all of the summer to get through, but now we're on the other side and have to start delivering on the promises we've made.
In your view, Steffen, what does a B2B growth engine look like? What does it consist of?
So first of all, I've mainly just tried this space, which is from a few employees up to like 100, 200 employees. So if you're north of that amount of employees, then I don't know so much about that space. But what I've tried sometimes now is to start somewhat from scratch and then build something up to at least scale up stage. When I look backwards, particularly at Dreamdata, actually one of the most important things we've done has actually been, you can say it's not per se an activity, but it has been really to spend time on defining who's our ideal customers, who's the antithesis to our ideal customers. Because by doing so, all the other choices that you're going to make afterwards is becoming a lot easier. So for example, we've defined it as B2B SaaS companies between, let's say, from the lowest end 50 employees up to somewhere around 2,000 employees. And predominantly the marketers within these companies. And once you've really decided upon this, then deciding on all the growth experiments, tests, marketing stuff becomes a lot easier, because you can match the idea up against would people from these companies actually find this attractive? Would they be present at this physical event? Would they be writing these things on Google? Where are they present, etc.? So I've really seen that how that have not only just aligned how we do marketing, but the whole company, that marketing knows who to attract. Salespeople are only allowed to work on accounts that look like the ideal customers. Product only builds for this type of persona. So over time, it helps set a direction for the company. Some of the kind of my inspiration for this comes from Seth Godin, which is kind of an old school marketer who had a book called Tribes, which I think works really well here as a metaphor for why you need an ideal customer profile. Because in most company, except if you're like Coca-Cola or IBM, you can't advertise to the whole world. You need to kind of spend the few money you have available just being super present in front of your persona, your ideal customer. So with a very narrow budget, if we use surfers as an example here, like people who would surf the water, then like there's a few spots around the world. There's probably a few books. There's probably some influencers. There's a few tournaments, maybe a few events. And if you're just present at these places, you would actually look like a pretty big surf brand. And by defining exactly who we're going for, I would think that's the fundamental for me. Don't be afraid of actually saying we can't sell to these guys. We can't sell to these guys. It hurts. I know it's really painful to say I'm not gonna.
There's an acronym for that. It's called FOMO, and it can bring cold sweat on your forehead.
But
Steffen, I was just curious because this is a very fundamental problem for pretty much any client I work with. The figuring out who's their ideal customer. And then this FOMO comes up and we should not sell to these guys over here. And they're pretty much in panic about that every time. How did you get, without us going complete ICP focus on this, but how did you, with you guys starting with 0 customers and then growing, how did you figure out that it was these B2B SaaS companies, 50 to 2,000 employees, and not some manufacturing companies or whatever stuff?
I think one of the components when you're in a subscription business, then who's most likely to be happy customers and renew their contracts. That's a super important thing. So you don't want your salespeople just to bring in accounts that will churn after the first year's contract. So for B2B SaaS companies particularly, they do a heavy investment in marketing online. Their sales teams typically use inside sales tools like CRM, calling software, email software, etc. And they also deliver their product digitally. So kind of we work with digital touches to kind of explain what's the customer journey. So we needed to find somebody who would generate a lot of digital touches of their customer journeys and who would be tech savvy, open, also have a good deal of money available. They used to have that last year, but let's see this year. So there's kind of these fundamentals. For the product to work well, we need a lot of digital reflections. We need tech-savvy people. We need people who are likely to be happy customers as well, because if they're not happy customers, then we'll have a lot of churn, and then we can't raise money afterwards either. So there's a few things that led us on the path to this, but it is extremely hard sometimes if there's a customer who seems like they want to buy and you don't have a lot of customers. So sometimes you shouldn't take it. So other times you need to be practical and just, get that deal signed. And then
May I just add one last, and then to go back to what a growth ain't like. If we take in different customers, not only will they might churn, they might not. But at the end, when they are customers and we start taking feedback for product development and product improvement, then we skew the whole product by taking in feedback from not ideal customer profiles. And that can be expensive because the product might end up being just as good and just as bad for everyone instead of being superior for a specific segment where word of mouth and raving reviews will come from. So I think also where we invest in the future and how our product looks is hugely depending on us having a great ICP.
Yeah.
So Steffen, let's get back to visually, what does a growth consist of in your mind in terms of what you created at the first stages up until a point in as CMO?
Yeah, the way I would always approach building growth engine will be to think about what would be a typical buyer's journey here for those that would be in market right now. It's not I think you typically say 1, 2, 3% of people of your addressable market is buying right now. So it's not the whole market you should start out with. I would start to try to grasp the people that are showing intent somewhere on the internet for buying. So like old school, you would call it bottom funnel. So I would say review platforms, if you've made your way all the way down to a category where you read reviews about certain pieces of software, then you're quite far in making a decision. Create a profile on these platforms, start collecting reviews there if you have any customers. There's the search engines, both paid and organically. Think through kind of what are people particularly writing when the intention for acquiring a product like yours would appear, and start coloring those like there's no doubt in your mind that if people are searching for this, then they're looking for something like what you do. And that is kind of an engine you always needs running. For us, particularly when we make software, there's a lot of these things we integrate with that have marketplaces. For example, HubSpot has a marketplace where you can click marketing and then analytics. If HubSpot users is messing around in there, obviously it's good for us to have a nice and shiny profile because they're quite far again in decision making. I don't know if you guys can think of other places you'd express strong in-market intent, but that I would look through kind of what is my industry, how is intention to buy expressed right now. That is that kind of this first engine I wanna get running.
Start with the low-hanging fruits, harvest those.
Yeah, exactly. And then from there on, it's very much, I think you have to be very experimental because it's different from company to company which tactics work. Even though some companies performing some tactic and it works for them, perhaps it doesn't work for you. Perhaps you're worse at executing it. It can be lots of things. But now that I think about it, even before you start pulling in traffic to your website, you need a website. You need to make sure that when people arrive to your website, that they actually can understand what is it that you do, why is it valuable, what are the features. So I had this case when we just started out, the three of us, there was barely a website. And I kind of just had to kind of interview our CTO to understand what is it we do? What is the technology? Why is this valuable, etc. So you need to make sure that wherever you funnel people, there's actually some good explanations of how does your thing work.
True. And does that like align with the pains that they have, your buyers? Do they get why this is a problem? And can we communicate that in a way so they're like, oh yeah, this I want to read more about, and eventually get on a trial or demo call with you guys, right? Like really understanding that, again, back to the ICP, understanding their language, their pains, their worldview, and also just their buying process. That's something Sean and I have been talking about a lot quite lately, actually, more with the enterprise space that, maybe they will not, like a big enterprise will not just sign up for a trial because there's like a CFO involved, the legal department, whatever in their decision process. And if you don't understand that, you're just going to fail.
Pains an ICP, because an ICP is an account, it's an organization, but inside that organization, we have personas. So then you have formal and informal decision makers. And so there are different owners of different pains that we need to understand. Yeah. The buyer's journey is really a great tool that you mentioned, Steffen, because it helps us understand what loops a client needs to go through, what information they need, the requirements and everything before they are able to buy. And those are great. If you have that, it becomes, just like you said about the ICP, it becomes fairly easy to create content and understand what content to create.
I think once you get to a certain deal size, people have to talk with people have to get approvals. So you should be thinking through, after I've convinced the first person I speak to, who are the people he or she needs to go through? Is it data security? Is it the CFO? Or who is it? And then ideally I would start developing content that addresses the concerns of these, like you can say, second tier stakeholders that you also need to convince. Yeah. If we get back to kind of the pillars, then we've done a lot of paid advertisement where we try to step a little bit outside those like crystal clear intentions. I think nowadays I'm really a big fan of LinkedIn. They have a function called matched audiences in their advertisement platform, where you can actually upload lists of exactly the companies you want to run your ads towards. So if you have a well-defined ICP and people in these companies have these problems, then I think it's a great way to spend some advertisement money. Forgetting about the tracking element of it, as long as I know it's these people in this company, in this function, yes. It cannot be all bad that they start to be exposed for our brand. Then obviously there's the secondary discipline is kind of, can we track it afterwards? But it has to start with the right people and the right message. And then next step is then to try to quantify it through some kind of tracking. I would say, growth engine, retargeting, like make sure like the people that are easiest in this world to sell to is people who've been on your website before. And that I would set up, first of all, install the tracking cookie from any kind of ad network. So it at least allows you the opportunity to get back to these people at some point if you want. It sounds like you've done that before.
Oh, if I could scale retargeting to infinity, it would make $1 billion. I mean, it's people that have shown in some interest, especially if you filter your retargeting audience a little bit based on not just like a 1 second visit or whatever, some crap traffic of a kid that accidentally clicked your YouTube video because they were watching something. But yeah, then it's definitely a good channel.
We put out some benchmarks in the summer about the average customer journeys that we could see with our clients. And from the first touch until a deal was won, average journey was 192 days. So like more than 6 months. Wow. And it had an average of 31 sessions with the company as well. And I think these components just highlights that you're not done once you get the first click in from some company. You need to like continuously bring them back to your website, continuously inspire them with content. You have to kind of just be like always on producing great stuff that can help support the salespeople all the way through.
True. If you have a big enough pipeline of people, you can basically set up retargeting campaigns based on where they are in your funnel stages. So if they're like, this is their next step, and like, the CFO needs to approve on this, then you can basically run ads, nurturing campaigns, whatever stuff based on that. Like get the calculator for your CFO, whatever, just to, put it out on YouTube, Meta, whatever, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Been doing that quite successfully. It's a bit overseen little trick, but you need to have a quite big volume of people coming in because you need to have enough for making these custom audiences or similar on the different platforms.
Yeah, we can drill a little bit more into the website as well. Just kind of typically you can think about the website as kind of a fishing boat for your activities. So you want to be able to catch as much of the attention that you're giving as totally possible. And like when I started working at Airtime, they just had buy this product as the single conversion that they had on their website. So buy our product or leave the website. And that would like 0.3% of the visitors would do that. But we little by little started introducing like these micro conversion opportunities. Chat with us. I think 1% chatted with us. We had this like pop-up back when they were a thing, where 1 to 2% also submitted to sign up to the news. We introduced a get a demo button, which today is standard everywhere, but that caught 0.3% as well. So suddenly once you start to have all these micro conversions, then when you put in 100 or 1,000 or whatever you put into your website, you get much more value out of the website. And yeah, maybe the first fundamental thing is just to install these advertising cookies. So at least you harvest the data that you can then repurpose. And I used to have a bad habit of whenever I saw a new company run TV ads, I would go into their websites to see have they installed the pixels from other places. Because I just knew if they hadn't, they're just like throwing money completely out of the window.
That's a fun little thing to do. Yeah.
But this is really key, and it's not necessarily gimmick or trick marketing. It's a matter of understanding what would create the biggest value for your visitor at this stage of their journey. So if they're trying to understand their own problem a little better, or since they might not buy the service or the product we sell very often, they might need some guidance in terms of how to look at this product. What does it need to do to help me solve these problems? So define and test out what kind of insight and content people will be willing to give their name and email address for, so you get the first micro conversions and can start supporting them on their journey. Yeah.
But I mean, if we get back to the kind of the growth engine, like for me, fundamentally, it's more like a mindset thing rather than it's, you said gimmick or like tactic. What I mean by that is that I view almost any marketing activity as some kind of an experiment. Like you have an idea, you try it out, you see kind of what is the return of it. Did it work? Did it not work? If you're happy about what you saw in the first round, then you try to put in a little bit more effort, a little bit more money or resources into the idea. If it still works, then you just keep adding resources to it, because it's you don't have to find 800 things that works. You just have to find 1, 2, 3 tactics that work, and then you have to sustain and scale these activities. If you do it by the book in those old growth hacking books, then you would once a month, once a week, once a quarter or something like that. You and your team would write down what are all the ideas we have to things we could do right now. And then ideally you also score them on like, is it expensive? Is it hard to do? What does our gut feeling say? What impact? I don't want to add too many because then it becomes too complex. But then you would grab those things that would be easy to do and expect to have some kind of impact quite effective. And then like little by little, you start carrying them out, see if they work, if they don't work. And then you shouldn't jump to new ideas once you find something that works. Then you should actually be looking to repeating these things. Can we scale it? Can we hire somebody just to own this thing because it clearly works? The reason why I'm emphasizing this is I see these things as when something works, that is what is going to fund the next round of experiments for you, because we're in this world to produce sales for our company, produce revenue. So don't produce revenue out of what we do, then kind of we can't afford to do the next round of experiments that we do.
It's a very good point with the going deep. Once you find something that actually works, then go deep on it, because it's a pattern that I've seen happen a few times, that people then at some point they just go into squirrel mode and they see some new shiny interesting object and they go for that instead. Like, hey, let's do TikTok ads, or let's do whatever stuff, and then they leave behind these things that were actually on a path to really improve the business and sales. And so being a little bit narrow focused.
I think it's super important. I think the next thing I just realized is that kind of when I say what works, ideally that means you make money.
Yes.
At least it produces proxies of what normally leads to money. For me, it's hard to not think about producing revenue with marketing, but some still have been in companies where the silos have been so big between marketing and sales that they're not even being asked how many of those marketing leads did we sell to, or how much money did we make from this campaign? And I think if you want to be successful and appreciated as a marketer or a growth person in a B2B company, at least you start by coming up with the narrative. We're doing these things so we get more leads, so the salespeople are busy and can sell stuff. And then you start telling this to the CFO or the CEO to explain them, we are doing these things because we want to sell more. And then the next component is you start to gather evidence, ideally hardcore, quantifiable evidence, but you might just have to start with qualitative stuff like screenshots or stuff like this. Hey, this guy mentioned us, he saw our ad here, stuff like that. But you need to produce revenue. That the scorecard here is the sales team selling something. It's not that we got another lead or we made an awesome campaign or people engaged with us. It's the company that needs to sell more.
Marketing needs to have a revenue goal. When I was taking my education at Copenhagen Business School, the narrative at that point was marketing doesn't have a seat at the management table because they cannot show their results. And meaning results, meaning sales. And so from that point on, I always just been like, I need to show my results. No matter if they complete shit or what, or great, fine. But then we can talk about it. And it also stresses the marketing team to deliver good leads for the sales team, because if they just fill up the pipeline with 500 poor leads, then sales are not going to actually close any deals. And then the whole organization is just going to struggle. Right?
Another growth trick. It's not like rocket science, but making sure that the sales and marketing team feels like part of the same process. Make sure that they sit in the same room. So when a lead comes in and it gets assigned to the salesperson, they can hear the salesperson saying, this is a fucking waste of time if I take this call. Sure. Because then you shouldn't bring in more of these leads. That is a waste of time. If you use the metaphor, if you would, every lead, if you think about presenting that physically to the salesperson, here's my mom, she wants to buy this very complex data product. Have a 2-hour call with her to see if you can sell to her. Then you'll probably stop bringing in these kinds of leads because it doesn't match who the salespeople should be spending their time on.
One of my clients, he was sitting 15 meters away from the sales team, but just decided to move right over and sit right in the middle of them just to get those sites. So that will be just a stupidly simple change, but it will be a game changer for them.
But I think the responsibility is on both sides. So if salespeople feel that leads are bad, then walk into the marketing team's room, physically or digitally, and say, these are not good leads. I like to talk to these kinds of leads. Or if you're unsure in marketing what a good lead is, then walk into the sales room and ask them, who are the best leads? Who would you like to have more to talk
and still keeping the ICP in mind.
Hopefully that if that is crystal clear for everybody, then they don't have to have this conversation that often.
We create our buyer's journey. We start figuring out where we can reach our ideal customers. Are they on a product comparison site? like products, right? Or are they on review sites? Can we reach them by paid advertising, one channel? And then we send the customer's buyer's journey. What do they need? Do some experimentation on what it takes to get some micro conversions. So what about now we've done some micro conversions? What is needed after that? Do we need some nurturing, or how do we start getting in dialogue with those that have shown interest?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think this really also depends on what is the average contract value of what you're chasing. So, like I know Christian was at Plan, they back in the day, and the average deal size there was not super big, so you can't necessarily afford a super skilled salesperson to chase a deal that is $200 a year or whatever.
It's much more.
Yeah. But if you're selling something that has like a 6-digit annual contract value, then the right solution is maybe just, get that salesperson on this account and have him start chasing it. If you're on these like lower deal sizes, you might want to automate a lot of stuff where you just continuously stay top of mind. Classics could be like when they do convert the first time on a newsletter or ebook, you start having a flow of emails sent out to them. I would also connect to anybody who converts on LinkedIn. So once you know who they are, go in, press connect, start interacting with them there. At Dreamdata, we do a lot of this we call it social selling, but essentially it's just posting on LinkedIn 2-3 times per week. And what I've noticed lately is also like people in marketing, B2B marketing, they change jobs so fast that the emails, like if you collect the email, I would almost rather collect a private email than a business email nowadays. Wow. Because they change jobs so fast that that email is useless within 6 months. So that's why you want to go connect with them on LinkedIn, because then there's a likelihood that if there's a fit to your ICP, they will move on to other companies that's your ICP. So it continues to just nurture the relationship with those people to where you stay top of mind with quality pieces of content, relevant things that you
Plus you will get notified that they actually did change job and for the new role at that account you're trying to reach.
That as well, and then obviously then you keep your retargeting flow turned on as well, so they're constantly bombarded, but at least exposed but if you're also sometimes in a direct competition with another vendor, but essentially just in a competition with everybody, because everybody's bidding on LinkedIn to push their message in front of people. And in organizations, projects come up and there's a limit to how many projects one organization can handle. So let's say a legal software project comes in, that might stop people from buying their attribution software right now because the data people can't handle another project. So this is it is a fierce battle for constantly staying top of mind and being that project that is the next one that gets
But like you said, that only 2 to 3% of your total addressable market is looking for solving their problem right now. The rest is going to be a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. So nurture and be content with the natural situation that you cannot stump up a readiness to buy if it's not there. You need to wait for it to happen. So keep
that's very true.
Timely perspective on your efforts, and do try to understand the people sitting on the other side, that it's still only 2 or 3% at any given time.
Yeah, I think here we're touching some like marketing fundamentals as well. Like it's nice to catch those that are in market right now, but you're kind of already a little bit late to conversation, because in their mind, they've probably listed 1, 2, 3 brands that they like, which they might go directly for rather than expressing a more broader category search. I think popular people call it demand creation nowadays. I've had enough.
In the old days, we called it branding. Be aware of what it is that I do. So, yeah.
Yeah. It has though highlighted this component for me that you need to be there before they are actively buying. And the way kind of we address that today at Dreamdata is we have this ideal customer definition, and then we've built lists of, I think it's like 1,500 or so, but now maybe it's more, B2B SaaS companies in Europe and America at a certain size, which we constantly run ads towards against the marketers who work in these companies. It's not kind of come buy our product right now. It's more like
lead magnets.
Yes.
Yeah, these are the problems you might have. Here's a video, blah, blah, blah. So the hope is that once that project move upwards, then we're present there. The same and this is connected to what I call social selling. So the account that we've named, our people also then continuously connect to. You have 100 connects you can spend per week on LinkedIn. So make sure you spend them towards your ICP. And then if you continuously post stuff 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times per week, then these people start to know a lot about your brand. And hopefully that will make them, once that they actually are in market, come to you rather than competition. So I think you're right, son. It's super important that, as I said, like start with those in market, but then be aware that the next component is to get in front of those that are most likely to be the next one that goes in market.
So, good point about social selling and the deal size, because that determines effort and expensive resources you can throw at it.
Maybe we should actually just jump a little bit into that, because it is sustainable growth. Growth is extremely important, and what that means is that in your company you need to establish what you're willing to pay for a certain business event, whether that's a demo call or it's a new customer. And then hopefully the activities you carry out will cost less than what you're willing to pay for a new customer. And if you find those activities, that are the activities you really should try to sustain, because here you've made a calculation. I'm willing to pay 500. We're getting them at 400. So I should just keep putting more money into this project. And then sometimes you'll see projects where like, oh, fuck, this doesn't make sense at all. So let's cancel these things. But it's boring stuff that actually makes up the growth engine. Who's the ICP? What is the cost per acquisition we can spend? Find stuff that works, sustain it, build, like continuously build on these things.
Yeah, and also just have some budget assigned for just like experimental stuff. Once you get to a level where like you have a pretty good predictable growth engine where you can just say, if I put in 1,000 here, I get 10 out on the other end. That's great. But you also need to at some point that channel will just dry out and you cannot scale it more. It will just get like super expensive to get the next extra 10 leads. So then you just need to keep experimenting on the site with some budget aside, like 10-15% of your total ad spend budget, just to freestyle on random stuff.
Back in the day, I've also done my mistakes. So I just like completely shifting the budget out to the next experiment that I found interesting. And then you see it just falling flat. Yeah. So that's all like, it's hard-earned lessons that sustain that stuff that works, and don't shift the whole budget before you're absolutely sure that it's the best decision. Yeah. Start with those 10%, 15%.
The scary part about that, if you do that, like switch your budget over, sometimes it's not immediately that it happens. Sometimes it's like 2-3 months down the line and you're like, oh, hell no. Like we should not have done that.
So continuous improvement instead of complete re-engineering.
I have not yet managed to find the silver bullet.
We can keep looking. In the meantime, we need to do continuous improvement. Definitely. Yeah. So, buyer's journey, ICP, create your buyer's journey for your ICP and really understand that, because the more in depth you go with that and really understand who in the ICP organization have what type of pains, you can speak to him, you can share content, and you can generate whatever you find by trial and error and test, what kind of attractive information and content they would love to get for micro conversions, and then figure out where to reach them. Paid channels, social, at what cost?
At what cost?
And certainly always have retargeting on. And it doesn't have to be just Google. It can be LinkedIn. It can be Facebook. It can be test out what works and what doesn't. It depends on your audience. And you might be surprised even. So create your content, set up the micro conversions, and this is definitely a test area. So you know exactly what they're looking for. What's the most desirable thing that they would love to give away that name and email address for, or push the demo button, or contact me. Social selling, forget, it's a way not only to reach out to the customers we'd love to have, but it's also a way to keep in contact and keep nurturing, and do test up the messaging on that, because whatever you post can be a dead end. It's a lot of competition out there. You want to create something that motivates people to engage, right? Something to get.
True, but you also need to have the mindset of like, fuck it, let's just try this and see what happens. Else you will never post anything.
So, Steffen, now we have this. And if there's anyone out there like me that have a frustration of Google Analytics, something about third-party cookies, and I'm not getting the data in Google Analytics I used to, besides the fact that Google Analytics can be a little cumbersome in actually getting an overview and some insight. And then I look for data in Google AdWords, on LinkedIn, my email program, and I got to make sense of all this and understand some kind of buyer's journey. And it's extremely hard and frustrating, is my opinion. So how do we deal with that? How do we get some level of attribution, and what kind of attribution should we be looking for?
I mean, it's a good question, and it depends on kind of the amount of resources you have in your organization. If we start from the low practical side of things, then first of all, think through kind of all the activities you guys are doing in your organization, and think about, is it actually generating digital reflections of our activities? Is our salespeople just like cowboys with their own phones, just calling customers directly? Then maybe we can move them into like a calling software, so it leaves a trace behind that somebody actually called this customer. Same thing if like customer success is just their Gmail inbox right now. Maybe it's time for Zendesk or Intercom or another piece of customer success software. There might be a lot of activities you do today that is easy to get to generate digital reflections. I think that would be point one. And then the next kind of attribution thing I would probably be looking for is asking people where they heard about you. Both on sales calls, on the website as they do their micro conversions, you can add how did you discover us, or how did you hear about us, or something like that. There's stuff you can do that it doesn't cost a lot of money that can help you understand a little bit more.
Reasonable CRM system that doesn't have to cost a lot. HubSpot is free. That might give you some as well, right?
Yeah, to some degree, definitely. Then maybe you want to start looking for what can be proxies for producing money that are not kind of the full journey, but like it's a good step in the right direction. I'm thinking really much on either somebody who books a demo or signs up to your product. And again, now I'm thinking very much in terms of digital companies, but those two things, if you push them upwards, it's probably, you probably won't sell to everybody, but it's a good step in the right direction. But it's also so early in the journey that you will probably have an idea about like you did A or B, and then suddenly more demo calls start coming in. So I like these early indicators of the activities we do, because we cannot sit and wait for 192 days to see whether it worked or not. We need clear signals. Sure. So maybe you want to focus on these conversions, demo call or free sign up. What are the paths people just take to this?
Is it the right kind of people that are signing up? and so on? Are they showing the right sim?
That's a really good point, Christian, as well. Like, look, what is this email that is coming through here? Is that good or bad? And try to understand. Maybe in the CRM, you can see this email had this original source or whatever. For example, the problem though is that when you get a demo booked for our website, it takes an average of 4 visits. And the last 1 or 2 visits are always, they came directly to the website. So the session captured is somebody came directly and then booked a demo. And you cannot, it's hard to scale people that coming directly to your website. So you need to be able to connect what was the first of those 4 visits? And there's different ways of doing so. But I think the main thing is that you start to think about that you need to own the tracking of your own website, like who's on my website, and store it in a place where you can continuously get access to it. Most marketers don't even consider that it's when they're looking in Facebook or LinkedIn or Google Analytics, it's another company who tracks their data for them and owns the data, and they can just get shut out. The data can be sampled. More legal measures will be introduced. And then
so what do we need to consider for solving?
So you need to set up tracking that you actually store in.
And what could that be?
You own. So there's our product Dreamdata can do it for you, but there's Segment, there's I think what's it called? Matomo. There's several of these Google Analytics alternatives out there where you install their tracking stuff and then you make sure that it's also stored in a data warehouse that you own. Because then afterwards you can start connecting it to the CRM system, the ad platform, email automation, etc. So that if we go from the beginners is just start leaving digital reflections behind, start asking people, where did you hear about us? And then there's the complex setup of tracking everything and technically building buyer journeys, etc. So I wouldn't recommend people to try to do that at home themselves, because they'll probably
try this at home.
Fail and we will not get more customers. But if it's important to state that it's it depends on at which stage you're at, and if you have 30 people in your company, it's much better to just be extremely active, do a lot of shit rather than thinking about analyzing what's working.
Yeah.
And then when you get to a certain maturity stage, then you can think about more advanced analytics stuff.
There's a correlation between how much you would need the super advanced setup, depending on how long is your sales cycle. Is it a 9, 12, 18-month sales cycle, then you have really a big problem tracking the funnel and the way to becoming a customer. Versus in companies I worked at, without mentioning specific ones, our sales cycle could be 1-2 months, and it was actually pretty smooth, just dun, dun, dun. Less of a problem with attribution, but I actually even though it feels like something that we would do early 2000s, where did you hear about us? That kind of things.
Yeah.
Actually does make sense, because Søren mentioned, the less third-party cookies we have and the more social selling we do, where we cannot necessarily make a direct link between what was posted there and them signing up through direct traffic later. We need to go back to some of those ways of doing it.
Especially, I love things that are kind of low effort, because then you can implement these things in a minute, and then it's done, and you start to have this piece of information.
Yeah.
Whereas bigger projects that takes a lot of time, I typically stay away from them, because it's more about, at least in the early stages, about getting a lot of shit done rather than trying to go for perfect with certain projects.
So at the early stage, we should not divert ourselves with big solutions that are collecting data from all channels, because if it takes a while from first contact to actually converting the visitor and the prospect to a paying customer, so much time will have passed that we can do that later. Let's focus on what creates micro conversions, what creates conversations, and book a demo or conversation. Begin with that. no big complexity there. And you can usually get that in whatever tool you use, if you're using CRM system, an email system, or your social platform in terms of how many conversations you've got. So
yeah, but even the simplest way I can put it is kind of, if you're in doubt whether something works or not, it's not working. And then, like, if you measure all your activities up against that, then you start to become aware that, like, we set up this Google display ad campaign where we're buying tens of thousands of clicks, and we see 0 more emails per month coming in. Then it's probably not working. Or we called 100 people, none of them said yes to a call. Well, it's not working.
Yeah. Been there, done that. Burned the money.
That's why you can now listen to us on a podcast. We have tried a lot of stuff that doesn't work.
That's just how it is. That's part of the experimental side.
Have discovered what activities are coming in and what it delivers, that we're actually generating some revenue from what we've set up. And we'd like to, now we have income and we have profit that can actually pay for a more clean, better setup. So what is it that we can achieve? For example, Dreamdata. What is it that as marketer can actually achieve in terms of repeatable revenue generated income from marketing activities?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that our customers are typically like there's some use cases that are typically quite interesting. If we start with like a paid marketing bucket, when companies spend a lot of money here in B2B, they have quite typically no clue about what becomes of that money that they've spent. In B2C, they have this, e-commerce Shopify web shops that sends back an information. Now you sold a running shoe. In B2B, you buy clicks, and then 6 months later, 12 months later, you see it appearing as closed won revenue in the CRM system. What we do is that we can help sanity check every single click that you've bought, like go into every campaign, every keyword, etc., and say, this keyword produced pipeline, this keyword didn't produce pipeline. And typically customers start finding out that a lot of the things that they spend money on never ever ends up producing revenue. So if you look at it from like kind of a bell curve, a normal distribution point of view, you start to become aware about the activities that you're doing that is quite clearly not impacting revenue. And then you free up those money to put in your pocket or reinvest in other stuff that like seems to repeat.
So how do we know that a campaign did not lead to any revenue or had any effect in terms of touch point along the how can we make sure it had no effect?
I'll explain a little bit the technology then, because that is kind of the key component here then. So when we see a user for the first time, and user here being just an anonymous ID, we'll record where did they come from, what have they looked at in the session when they're on the website, and where did they come from when it's from ad platforms, particularly from Google. It has a unique click ID, which is completely unique to that one click. And we store then this click on this user and write it in our database. This user came anonymously from this place. Then that user might have 3-4 more visits to the website, and we'll just keep adding to the logbook while they remain anonymous. Once they then submit a form, which could be a demo call, newsletter sign up, whatever, log into the product, we get consent to reveal, or not reveal, but connect their known identity with their unidentified. So now we know it's Søren from the Messy Growth Show that actually clicked on the ad the first time and that now pushed through the demo form. And then the next loop we need to do is then to build or to sort the touches that you have with all the other touches from the Messy Growth Show, all the way through until you become a closed won account. this is a fundamental problem that B2B companies face, is that we're typically selling to teams or groups of people. And the ones that starts the journey is not necessarily the ones that signs the contract. But you need to map them into the same timeline because they're actually part of the same timeline. And the ad platforms today are only looking at the different individuals. So spend some money, book a demo call. But you never know whether that demo call was an account you sold to. So this process is what we help automate for our clients. You bought all these clicks, which essentially a cohort, and this cohort then yielded X amount of MQLs, later on sales qualified leads, and later on new deals.
It's a good point with the different people involved in the buying process, because I was using Dreamdata, one of my previous clients, and I remember looking at the data and seeing that what you would typically call the champion or something, person that actually had the problem down on the floor would sign up, and then eventually you would get a direct traffic sign up, which was from the boss, and that person would be connected to the closed one deal. But you had to look at it in context and say, okay, it was actually this guy here on the floor that started the conversation, but the boss that sealed the deal.
But that is really a fundamental that you need to understand, that the way to look to analyze it is you go look at the deals you won last quarter. How many people is associated to this deal in your CRM system? And then you'll probably see, at least if the salespeople are not super sloppy, you can see that 3, 4, 5 people are actually associated to one deal. And that means that your marketing, also the way you measure it, is very much impacted by this scenario. The CEO would never be the one that does the footwork of looking at review platforms, making the list of vendors we should consider. They might come for the very last meeting and then, okay, they're not completely stupid, I'll sign the contract.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
So I don't know if that helps you kind of understand.
I mean, it's fair to call it cookieless tracking, right? Because we're using our own first-party cookies now, and not any third-party cookies to track users. So we're fully GDPR compliant.
We do still set cookies, but it's first-party.
That we have permissions for.
And we track in the local stores. Exactly. The whole difference is that it's you as the company who's collecting the data, and not some other entity that is collecting.
So thereby we are GDPR compliant when using that.
If they have accepted that you start tracking them. We don't want to do anything illegal, but there are illegal ways of setting tracking as well, but we don't do that. I'm sure Christian knows a lot of these technical details.
GDPR is my favorite nightmare. Back to the days where you could just set cookies randomly. That was good days.
What you, Steffen, consider to be a funnel, and what our platform needs to consist of to be able to facilitate a repeatable revenue generation engine, so to speak, and a few tricks of how we can actually map that and how we can track it without breaking the bank. Go easy in the beginning, because you don't have the ability to correlate any marketing activity to revenue anyway. So find some midpoint, some conversions, some micro conversions that you aim for measuring against. That would be your success criteria. And once you start generating revenue, maybe you can consider some bigger solutions. But again, we touched upon this a couple of times. It has to be profitable. So we need to consider what basket size or deal size is before we and figure out that we are able before we start investing in bigger tools. So start small, experiment a lot before you start scaling on your tools. Appreciate your time, Steffen, and sharing your gold nuggets.
Likewise, it was fun. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Messy Growth Show. Check out the upcoming guests on the messygrowthshow.com. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and YouTube. And if you do have any comments, feedbacks, or suggestions of topics that are of particular importance to you as owner or marketer in the software or manufacturing industry, please do reach out to us on messygrowthshow.com. It will see you on the next episode of the Messy Growth Show.